great to have you join us as one of our first guests on the Stanford Founder podcast. And to start it off, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're building at Pareto AI.
So happy to be here, Tiantian and Stephen. I'm building a human data platform at Pareto, and we help all the AI labs, pretty much Anthropic, Google Deepmind, source their expert data for AI training and evals.
Awesome. So I guess to start off, what initially kind of motivated you to take the leap to become a founder? And can you sort of walk us through the journey from Stanford to starting Pareto?
I'll go all the way back. I was born in China and I immigrated to St. Louis, Missouri when I was 5. And I hated St. Louis, sadly, because I wasn't really inspired by any of the things that my peers did in the Midwest. There was no computer science classes, first off, which is ridiculous now. And also my family had a pretty tough time with immigration. My dad had a PhD in engineering and now he's a truck driver, and my mom had to work her way from waitressing back to being a registered nurse, which she's really proud of now. Growing up, it was really tough because my parents had a hard time finding work, and it was really obvious to me that something was broken with how people access work. So I was really curious about the gig economy and how the internet actually provides a lot of work. So when I got to Stanford, that's how I got into computer science, was studying human-computer interaction and how these systems can be designed to help people do work better. And that's where I joined Michael Bernstein's HCI lab. That's where I got my first taste of entrepreneurship through running some programs at ASES. And then ended up going to Oxford's, the study abroad program at Oxford, actually diving deeper into HCI there, and from there jumping off to a gap year that led to Pareto. And at the time it was this really naive idea of, oh, let's build a boot camp that can upskill people, specifically work-at-home moms, and have them be virtual assistants for founders, and ended up getting a few grants from different VC firms and organizations to drop out and ended up getting the Thiel fellowship. So that led to my pre-seed, that led to a few years later, my seed round, and then that's the journey.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, and especially that you mentioned what some Stanford resources that kind of help you along the way. I think you also mentioned ASES, and for context, there's a couple of startup clubs on Stanford campus. One's like ASES and Basis. And do you want to share a little bit more on the work that you did while you were running ASES? Sorry.
Yeah, ASES was the scrappy entrepreneurship club at the time when I joined. It was apparently nowhere near its reputation today, which is something I'm really happy to hear. And at the time, I was part of the ASES bootcamp that was a crash course on design thinking and how to build a product. And the following year, I ended up leading ASES bootcamp. I think I also organized another program that I forget now. And through these organizational experiences, I got to meet a ton of entrepreneurs, a ton of VCs, got to do internships at startups, got to travel abroad for the first time. It was the beginning of a lot of stuff. And I think it gave me the taste for entrepreneurship and made me feel a lot more comfortable with just dropping everything and doing my own thing.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And I think across colleges, there's a lot of these, I guess, startup programs at clubs facing lower classmen. And I'm actually curious, in your experience, how has some of those core skills and knowledge that you built and got exposed to in these earlier days of your, I guess, startup journey helped you along the way into what you become today? Like, for example, has the things that you were exposed to while you were in the ASES boot camps stayed true, over the past couple of years?
I can tell you were a Basis member. You're inserting Basis everywhere.
I'm sorry about that.
To be honest, I think these were stepping stones. Like, I would not have wanted to organize ASES bootcamp twice because the first time was already a huge learning experience. I ended up taking Lean Launchpad with Steve Blank. I ended up taking the d.school version of Launchpad as well.
Launchpad, yeah.
And both
Yeah.
those courses taught me valuable skills. Lean Launchpad taught me how to put myself out there, don't give a shit about what other people think of me, and just talk to 10 people a week. And then Launchpad helped me apply the d.school design thinking framework into actually iterating on a startup, on a business. And those were all pretty formative experiences. At the end of the day, though, what probably helped a lot was just having exposure to different VCs, different entrepreneurs. I ended up moving up to SF during the early part of my, I took a gap year during my junior year, and I lived in SF in a founder hacker house that actually was what inspired me to drop out fully, like really commit. I do think at the end of the day, it's not enough to just take these classes. You really have to lean into the ecosystem in SF, in Silicon Valley, be really close to different entrepreneurs at different stages, so you can actually see what the day-to-day is like. Otherwise, you'll never truly understand what it takes, and you'll never build the confidence it takes to just go for it.
You mentioned several reasons why you dropped out, including the fellowship that kind of paid you to drop out, and also like the hacker house that you were in. So walk us through the kind of journey from, I guess, Stanford to eventually starting that Pareto.
So after I left Stanford, I took an internship at Microsoft Research in India, where I thought a lot about the gig economy and got to apply some of my HCI learnings. After that, I worked at an internship at a diabetes management health tech startup in Mountain View called Lark, and got to do some product engineering work. And those were both internships I did on my gap year. And I really enjoyed having a gap year because it helped me have more clarity about what I wanted to learn. So after my gap year, I went back to school for I think 2 quarters and just took a ton of entrepreneurship classes. Those quarters were when I took Lean Launchpad and then separately later Launchpad. And that, I think, led to actually just dropping out completely. And this was during COVID, so it was like 2020, totally dropped out, and then trying to raise my pre-seed. And so these experiences really, I think, gave me a combination of like industry experience that gave me some insight into the world, and then pretty precisely selected coursework that kind of laid the foundation for starting this company.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
That sounds super cool. Yeah, and I think that besides the ASES and BASES clubs that we mentioned, you also mentioned Lean Launchpad and Launchpad, which I also had the chance to take. I had the chance to take Lean Launchpad, and one of the things from my experience is that it's very intense. You talk to a lot of customers to figure out if your product's gonna work, right? To get validation, to get evidence, right? To kind of inform you on where you might go next, right? And just kind of curious on, like, from your experience, how have, I guess, Lean Launchpad and Launchpad serve you in your startup journey? Do they feel like they were sort of the next stair after you've taken the opportunity from ASES?
All classes are classes at the end of the day. All programs are programs. At the end of the day, they create a sandbox for you to experiment and build your skills. Nothing truly prepares you for doing it all on your own. It's like being in a sandbox versus in a infinite universe of decisions that need to be made according to a shifting market that you can't predict, especially nowadays. So I'd say all these things build the courage to pursue your startup dreams, but then actually getting to doing it, it's very different.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's really interesting how you mentioned this idea of sandbox, right? When you're taking classes, you're always in the sandbox, and when you're in the real world, you're out of it, right? And real world, there are opinions. People have opinions. And as I know you've seen recently that there have been a lot of debates on the internet about Stanford founders, right? Some people say that they do companies because there are no choices, they have no other choices. Some people say that Stanford founders raise money because they can and they're on that caliber of doing so, right? So I'm actually going to read you a couple of comments to get your response. And we're going to start slow, right? And we're going to get spicier from there. Okay, so first comment. All my Stanford founder friends was thinking about dropping out since the day they enrolled.
That's funny and probably pretty true. I mean, you hear the legends of like Brex founders dropping out their first week or something. And yeah, that was definitely something I looked up to.
Okay, all right. And the second comment, Stanford undergrads be doing one and done like their NBA lottery picks.
Wait, I don't know what that means.
Looking at it again, I'm actually not sure what it means either. But I think they are. I think the gist of it is that it's probably commenting on, I guess, Stanford undergrads wanting to like take a big swing and just win it.
Sounds right. Sounds about right.
Okay, cool. Yeah, all right. So we're gonna move on to the third comment, which I think is the most brutal. Ready? Okay. So Stanford, the only place where dropout founders go to flex their education while building the next big thing no one asked for.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I agree with the sentiments behind all this. Like all of these are true, and there are actually really cool people that are building really cool things. And also, I think someone in their early stage of their journey will always be building something that no one wants because they just haven't figured out what the market needs. Like that's the process. The process is putting yourself out there, knowing that you will fail, and just failing countless times until you have the resilience to just succeed. So this is all true, but it doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
Following up on that, I know your company also went through pivots. So how did you eventually kind of find the product market fit, and what are some kind of initial hypotheses that proved out to be wrong, and eventually how did you find the thing that was right?
No one really knows how they find product market fit. It's like you know it when you have it, right? And you can try all these different playbooks to try to find product market fit. And even when you think you have it, you don't. Even when you have 8 figures in revenue, you may still not have product market fit. So what does it even mean? I think it's in this market like an evolving process of iteration, even monthly, weekly, to keep on track with what the market needs. It's never over. It's never a one and done process. So Pareto went through 3 different pivots. We were a VA startup, and then we were a lead generation collection, data collection startup, and then finally we became a human data company 2 years ago now. Every decision to pivot really required me to confront some of my own blind spots. The first around VAs is confronting that I don't have to stay generalized to be able to apply human talent effectively. That was a big assumption I had coming in. I had to really assess my beliefs, to change those beliefs based on the data, and then update the company based on what I think the market actually needs. The second pivot from data collection to human data was actually much easier. It was much more in my face because it was ChatGPT 3 launching 2 years ago, and the world realizing, oh, this shit is happening. And me realizing that human talent is not going to be necessary for data collection, at least for sales and marketing data collection, but rather most useful for training AI. And that actually, if we pivoted, we would apply our systems for orchestrating people and talent and upskilling them to a much larger market in data training.
Got it. And also, how long did it take for you to kind of go from the first idea to eventually the third idea?
It should have taken me much shorter, but I was a first-time founder. I was stubborn. I think it took me at least a year to get from the first to the second idea because I just needed to raise money and I realized the idea was not working. I needed to reframe it. From the second to the third pivot, it probably took 2 years. So 3 years total before I got to this latest pivot, which is human data. So I stuck it out for a while.
And I'm curious because during so much pivots, I'm sure there's like a team, like a founding team that still stay with you as you kind of go through all those pivots. So how did you convince the team and also kind of paint new visions for the company as the company and the idea evolves?
What helps a lot is if you retain your core principles and mission. And for us, the reason to pivot into human data is that we could have more impact with the systems that we are creating to help bridge economic opportunities with talent. So that's why the team came. That's why they're here still. And that's something that we've helped them on even throughout the pivots. I think it's important to note that like pivoting isn't just selling your soul. There's definitely part of it where you do realize the market wins at the end of the day. You can't control what the world needs, and the world's just going to pull what it needs out from you. And if you deny it, then you're going to fail. That's just business. So there's part of that, but then there's also part of what motivates you to keep pushing this even during hard times. And the motivation needs to be deeply rooted in your purpose and what you care about.
Gotcha.
So keeping a hand on our original mission and while pursuing market needs has really helped us stay grounded.
Makes sense. To switch gears a little bit, in your startup journey, what do you find to be surprisingly easy? And also what's surprisingly difficult?
What's been easy? Gosh.
Feel free to say nothing.
Yeah.
If it's like close to
Is
truth.
there something that's been easy? Ugh. Okay, what's been really nice is surrounding myself with a group of mentors that I trust because I'm a solo founder. So I don't really have a sounding board. And what's really pushed us through is having initial advisors that have covered my blind spots, especially in sales, go-to-market, and even product and engineering, before we even had the capacity to hire full-time talent. So just getting that group around me really was a safety net for me and helped me through a lot of tough decisions that, like intuition-wise, I would have made wrong in the early days. So what was hard? Everything else. I think once you have the resources, you need to figure out how to use those resources, how to get more of those resources. And the CEO's job is hiring, fundraising, and setting culture in the company. I had no experience with any of those three things. I didn't even see myself as someone who could fundraise or sell or motivate a team. Because I'm an only child, I'm an introvert. I did not believe in myself like 5 years ago. So I think the hardest part is constantly evolving myself to grow into what the company needs from me. And at every stage of the company, figuring out what are my blind spots that is keeping the company from its next phase of growth. And it's funny because when you think about it, all of the day-to-day micro decisions that the founder makes truly leads to the big outcomes in terms of a company's trajectory. So in a way, the company is a manifestation of the founder. And I found that to be so true in many ways. One example is I was pretty insecure about my own decision making, so I would delay decisions. I push decisions onto other people. But at the end of the day, I am the CEO and the buck stops with me, so I have to make my opinions known. Otherwise, I'm setting people up for failure because they will just inevitably disappoint me. And as soon as I was like, I have to do this, I just became much more confident in my decisions. And I became a much more clear leader, a stronger leader, because I trusted my instincts and actually said what needed to be said. And that helped me with hiring, that helped me with firing as well, with fundraising. Everything is been shaped by those personal learnings.
Got it. And I know you mentioned you're a solo founder, and I would say it's a contrarian choice in today's environment So what kind of made you decide on becoming a solo founder? And if you were to do it again, would you still be a solo founder, or would you find like co-founders?
I didn't have a choice. I couldn't find a co-founder that I liked, I respected, and that shared the vision. And maybe part of it is because I didn't know myself. I didn't know what I wanted to build. It was hard to find the right person to build it alongside me. Now I have more clarity on what I want to build, and I'm actually open to even finding executive level or founding team level people 5 years in. Because, hey, if they're going to change the trajectory of this company, I'm down to give them a founding title even 5 years in. So that's been an evolution over the past few years, and I think it's great to have co-founders. I just wasn't in the right place to find them when I started the company.
Makes sense. Yeah, I do agree. I feel like building companies like becoming a better version of yourself and learning more about yourself. And in that journey, you sort of like, you find out about what you're good at, what you're bad at, how you want to kind of evolve this company into, and eventually you're at a stage where, okay, I know where I need help, and now I look for those type of help in that area. That's really fascinating. And also, I'm curious, what advice would you give like a kind of current Stanford student who's debating between starting a company, joining big tech, or something else entirely?
I can't really say because it depends on the person. It depends on your risk tolerance, if you have a safety net that you can fall back to. For example, I moved back home when I was first starting out because I didn't have money. And then I also just had a ton of roommates. I lived with a ton of, or housemates when I moved back to SF. And I just didn't have a great quality of life. Back then, I was willing to suffer because I thought that I would just regret it if I didn't try when I'm young. I do think that it's a question of a good framework to think about this is thinking about what you would regret in 10 years if you didn't do it now. And looking back almost 6 years later of that decision, I'm really thankful that I took the leap because it worked out for me. But it wouldn't have worked out if I didn't have the conviction that I really wanted to make it work, if that makes sense. Because I did have to suffer through 3 years of pivots and not knowing what would happen. And I just held on because I had that framework of I need to do this or I'll regret it because life is short.
Steven?
Yeah, Phoebe, it's great to have you here today. We've learned a lot from your experience and your stories, and hope you had fun chatting with us. Are there any last thing you want to share with the audience?
Build as many relationships as you can in school because those are going to serve you a ton. That's pretty basic advice, but even now I've hired a lot of friends that I worked with at Stanford. I've hired from their friends. I've also just made a lot of new friends. So business is just being someone that people like working with and that they think you're cool and want to spend time with you. At the end of the day, that's business. So being a good business person is just being a good friend to a lot of people.
Cool. Awesome. That's it. I'll stop.